So real quick, we'll talk about the CCGBC. And a big part of this series is to investigate who the speakers are in a way. But the hope is that you experience some different career paths and how those individuals got into those careers. And if there's interest in learning more about them, you think you might want to have a career similar, we want to create an opportunity for you to interact with and potentially even receive mentorship from these people. It's a big goal of mine being CCGBC president this year. We'll talk about green building, kind of why and what, and then a quick crash course to LEED and just at a really high level. So what is the CCGBC? We are a local nonprofit, so a 501c3, and we represent the wide range of sectors with regard to buildings. So many of you may have heard of the AIA, which is primarily focused with architects, right? The CCGBC partners with the AIA in a lot of projects, but we represent kind of the wider range of different career paths. So builders, educators, landscapers, pest control agents, whatever career path you're in, if you're interested in sustainability in the built environment, there's a place for you in the CCGBC. We are a local chapter of the United States Green Building Council. You may have heard of the USGBC before. What's unique about us is we represent San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. All the money that we raise is spent locally. We do advocacy and education and workforce development, specifically in San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As we've moved more online, options to interact with other people have expanded, which has been a benefit in the last year. But that's where our primary focus is. And our vision is for everybody in the Tri-County to live or work in a healthy building, and to inspire a built environment that supports human and environmental health. Our mission statement is to continue the transformation of the Central Coast into a sustainable community, economy, and environment through the education and advocacy of green building design, construction, and operational excellence. And just really quickly, we have 5 core values. We believe in the protection and stewardship of the natural environment, acknowledging its relationships with the built environment, right? You can't separate the built environment from the natural environment as much as we've attempted to. We seek to create a more equitable distribution of the triple bottom line, and that means partnering with other organizations that are focused on social equity and other really important issues these days. We aim to create a collaboration or a regional network of professionals and trade groups. So that's where interacting with other nonprofits, other NGOs, private sector, public sector, we really want to be a hub, and we celebrate innovations and successes of organizations that implement green building designs and programs. So I want to take just a second and talk about myself. I don't care to do it a whole lot, but I think it's an important aspect of making sustainability and the career paths available and just more clear. So I'm going to quickly run through kind of how I've gotten to where I am today. I grew up in Northern California and learned about UC Santa Barbara in this region after I got accepted into school. I've really fallen in love with the South Central coast of California and had my first experiences with green building while I was on campus at UC Santa Barbara. In fact, I didn't know that sustainability existed before going to UCSB. As I was there, I worked on my first LEED project and got introduced to the idea of marrying environmental activism with financial and fiscal responsibility, and seeing that building and operating green buildings was not only technically viable, but also the right thing to do for human health and environmental health. So I graduated in 2012 and said, I'll take the first job I get. And there is a small consulting firm in Orange County called Healthy Buildings. And at the time, they weren't hiring. They weren't looking for anybody. I had just gotten my LEED Green Associate credential, and I started knocking on doors and asking for employers that are looking for potential people like myself. And even though there wasn't a position created, they decided to bring me on as a consultant with the stipulation that I would get my LEED accredited professional credential within a 3-month probation period. And I spent a couple years working with Healthy Buildings, certified over a dozen projects, one of them being a 1.5 million square foot building in downtown Los Angeles. And given that it was a small consulting firm, I was able to work on a wide range of projects with different levels of responsibility that really propelled me into where I am today. I think working for a mega big corporation may have limited my ability to do that. So I'm incredibly grateful for Healthy Buildings and kind of putting me in the field quickly and help allowing me to get that job work experience. After a couple of years, I decided to further my education. I was really interested in renewable energy and energy storage and transitioning into a more sustainable energy, a world of energy. And so I went back to UCSB to the Bren School and got my master's in environmental science and management with a focus in energy and climate. While I was there, I got presented an opportunity to teach a class at UCSB, and which I actually still teach that class today. It's basically a LEED 101 where I've supported students in getting their LEED Green Associate exam credentials and have pushed for buildings to be more sustainable on campus over the last 5 years. I currently am an environmental supervisor for the city of Ventura, where I manage a small team and am primarily focused on pushing forward our energy and climate action plans. We also do waste and recycling and a whole other slew of things to ensure that Ventura is a sustainable place to live and a place where people want to rest and have families and continue to be a part of that community. And in 2017, I became a Central Coast Green Building Council board member in effort to be more involved in my community and create programs that I think are important. And that's done made primarily through interacting with the people in those communities, figuring out how the Central Coast Green Building Council can step in, and then following through with that. So this speaker series is a piece of that. Lisa, Ralph, and I have been talking about how we can be of service to the next generation. And Lisa and I were landed on awareness and just accessibility to information and people. So I'm hopeful that this speaker series will spur some interest and create a platform for really anyone, primarily students, but it doesn't have to be students, to seek mentorship and find people in the industries that they're interested in to partner up and work together to find solutions, to find career paths that are going to be fulfilling and to make a difference. That's really what we're all about. Okay. So obviously you can't read this, or at least I assume you can't. But I wanted to show, this is the org chart for the City of Ventura Public Works. As you can see, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of people. This is about a fifth of the employees that the City of Ventura has. I think there's like 600 people employed. And the sustainability team is relatively small. This is just one family tree, if you will, of the larger organization. The environmental sustainability team is this right here. So we have about a dozen people that work in our team. We do stormwater management, streets, general sustainability, and waste related items. I started off as a specialist managing our Green Schools program, where we did outreach and education for the K through 12 classrooms in the city of Ventura. And a couple years ago was promoted to the supervisor position. And now I have the joy of working with 3 specialists and 4 other assistants. And we run programs for the city of Ventura, ranging from composting at home to greening up schools and our green business certification program. It's really fun. Local government, I never thought I'd be working for local government, especially if you asked me while I was going through school. But it's proven to be a really great opportunity to make an impact in people's lives. And we're working with our stakeholders are the community, and it's a really special opportunity. So, what is green building? Well, there's a lot of different definitions out there, but generally I see it as a holistic concept that starts with the understanding that the built environment or the buildings we live and work in can have profound effects, both positive and negative, on the natural environment as well as the people who inhabit buildings every day. Right? Green building is an effort to amplify the positive impacts and mitigate the negative impacts throughout the entire life cycle of a building. And when we think life cycle, we think extracting raw materials, transporting them to a location, the actual construction of a building, the occupation of a building, and then the end of life of those materials. So how does green building affect each aspect of that life cycle? It can't just be viewed as the energy consumption of a building, right? Or how sustainable is the wood in a building? Or do people feel happy and healthy when they're inside the building, right? It's across the board, it's the whole thing. And LEED does a pretty good job of looking at all the different sectors and coming up with strategies for each of those. Another shocking statistic, and I was like, this doesn't include me, but the EPA estimates that the average American spends 93% of their lives indoors, which 6% of that is in a car, which is kind of disgusting. But about 7% of our life is spent outdoors in the sun, in natural air, only 1/2 of one day per week. And maybe not in California, but you get the idea. People live in buildings and they spend most of their life inside. Um, think for yourself, have I ever been in a building where I felt ill when I was in that facility? I know I have. I work in them, I teach in them, and sometimes I've even lived in buildings that I think are actually causing me illness, are making me ill. And it's interesting because the effects of a sick building are very similar to the common cold, right? Stuffy nose, itchy throat, headaches. These are all aspects or symptoms of a sick building. And it could be making us sick individually. And part of my goal and my opinion really is not only should buildings be beautiful, but they should be efficient and improve our health and well-being. I imagine a world where buildings make us healthier, not make us ill. And we have the technology to do that. It's just a matter of will and looking at the real benefits over the life cycle of a building, not just the construction costs. So the life cycle impacts of conventional buildings have profound impacts on human health and the environment. We're talking 14% of potable water consumption, 38% of CO2 emissions, 40% of raw material use, 40% of energy, 72% of electricity consumption, all in the building sector, right? So if you're asking yourself, what's an opportunity for me to make an impact in the world? It's really clear that designing better buildings has an immediate result in improving the health and wellness of our economy, environment, and human health. And what we've seen over the years with sustainability implemented in buildings is they have lower maintenance costs, right? It's more cost effective to manage the building. They use less energy. Not everyone, but generally speaking, they're more energy efficient and water efficient. Using less energy, Having lower maintenance costs just results in lower CO2 emissions. But the real big financial improvement is one, building value, right? Building owners speak in dollars and cents. And it is true across the board that green building and sustainability increases the value of buildings. And what I think is most important and very difficult to put a dollar figure on is productivity. And 2 to 16%, that's a wide range. But even if it's 2% of increase in productivity for an entire workforce, think about the financial element of that. If you work in a building that you know has really good ventilation, you know there's low VOCs, you know that the furniture they have doesn't have formaldehyde, there's spaces where there's natural light, the list goes on and on. Generally speaking, people are happier to work in those types of environments, and it improves their productivity. There's a lot of research that's gone into this over the years, and that's really where building owners or business owners can experience the financial benefits of green building. Yeah, lower energy, lower water, those things are nice, but really the payback comes in productivity. And this is just kind of from me, looking at statistics and people that are looking at population growth. We're expected to reach 10 billion people on the planet by 2050. Of course, if nothing major changes, just following trend lines. And considering the number of people that don't have a roof over their head around the world, we'd have to roughly double the square footage of the built environment by 2050 to offer housing to every human on the planet. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure where those resources are going to come from. I'm not sure where that energy is going to come from. But one thing is for sure, we either have to make our current buildings way more efficient, or we have to be looking at net zero energy and net zero carbon when we're talking about designing buildings for the future. Another thing that's really important to note is the developing world is where these populations are blooming. Um, we're talking about India and China and Africa is where they think uh, most of the growing populations are going to be over the next 30 years. And these areas don't have building codes. I mean, some of them do, but most of them don't. And the developing world, as people are becoming more affluent, as their populations are growing, they're really looking at the developed world, not just the US, but there are many other countries who are leading in the green building world. And one of the things that the US Green Building Council has been very effective at is improving building codes over the years. Now, some would say to a fault, and building codes aren't perfect. I'm not here to tell you they're the best thing ever, but they do result in safer buildings, and in California, more energy, more water efficient. And in the near future, we're going to see renewable energy incorporated in every new construction. So the rest of the world is watching what the US is doing, and particularly California. And I really like this. Sustainability has an interest, a connotation to it. Some people love it, some people hate it. I think it's a really interesting model to look at my life and in buildings as a whole. So you may have heard of the 3 pillars of sustainability, the 3 E's. I like to look at this diagram because something is sustainable if it improves or maintains the integrity of our natural environment, of our economy, and our society, also known as ecology, economy, and social equity, right? So one thing to consider is we're going to build a new neighborhood in your town. How can we build it so that it doesn't degrade the environment? What mitigation aspects can we include that actually maybe the development could improve the local environmental resources? When we talk about bioswales or other carbon sequestration opportunities in a neighborhood. Economically, is it something that's going to bring money into that community? And is it done in an equitable way? We've seen a lot of low-income housing popping up, but sustainability historically has a reputation of being for people with deep pockets or full bellies, if you will. It hasn't historically been accessible to, for lack of better term, the disadvantaged areas within our communities. And so something that I'm really passionate about is discovering ways to make sustainability equitable. I think that's been a big piece that's been ignored over the years. We see these high-rise buildings with these amazing features, but what about the people? How does it affect the individuals in the building, and not just those who can afford it, but for everybody? And so when you're thinking about your lifestyle, the business you work for, your purchasing practices, how you move around in your community, the energy that you purchase, how does sustainability fit into those? How can you use this model to make decisions, right? It's not an end goal. We're not going to be like, yay, we arrived at sustainability. I think that this is a tool to use as we consider different things. Where does your energy come from? If you can't answer that, you should look into it. And there may be choices around that. So something worth looking into. Okay, so why green building education? Folks that have LEED credentials, so LEED Green Associates and accredited professionals, say that their professional credentials have given them a competitive edge in the market. And 71% of hiring decision makers see an increased competitiveness for individuals who have gone above and beyond their degrees and have gotten professional credentials. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. This list of potential careers in green building, it goes on and on and on, but I just wanted to put it here as an opportunity to inspire and see if there's something that becomes of interest. And it's amazing the different careers that are affiliated with green building. And a lot of the time, it's the same career with a different color hat. And there's ways of looking at every career through the lens of sustainability, but particularly with green building, all of these careers are incredibly important in making it all work. I mean, it's not one person that makes a building green. Okay, so what is LEED and where does it come from? LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It originally was created as design tools for new construction projects. It was created by the United States Green Building Council, or the USGBC, in the year 2000. It was designed to be reinvented every 3 to 5 years. So for construction managers, that's a big pain, right? That you're gonna have new standards every 3 to 5 years. But for sustainability professionals, it's like, yeah, we get an opportunity to improve and expand on this and set a new foundation, a new standard every 3 to 5 years. And it's a completely voluntary program, and the people involved in updating these standards are across the entire sector. And they're professionals like me and you that participate in the evolution of this program. So it's very alive in a lot of ways. And today covers a lot more than just new construction or design of buildings. And as I mentioned before, one of the biggest improvements, or one of the greatest results of the US Green Building Council and LEED, has been more stringent building codes and just consistently raising the bar in terms of what it means to have a sustainable building. So the USGBC and LEED have 5 main rating systems. The first is building design and construction, and that's 2 processes. So one is how a building is designed, right? Is it, where is it located? What kind of products and materials are going to be used for the construction of that building? How are the energy systems designed? water systems, landscaping. It's really looking at the design of the building, right? A lot of what architects are doing is the design aspect. And then there's the construction aspect of the LEED building, which is, did you manage your materials well? Did you stage things appropriately? Did you ensure that when it rains, all of your, the silt and debris doesn't end up in the storm drain? So it's two aspects, right? The design and then the construction. Some buildings don't have an intended use. So you might build a building as a core and shell, and then it would get occupied by tenants. Or there could be an existing building. It might not be a LEED building, but the tenants in the building want to build it out in such a way that meets LEED standards and they can get certified for interior design and construction. So you may be sitting there saying, well, designing buildings is cool, but I'm really more interested in the interior. So there's a rating system for that, and it's actually quite effective and is used by a lot of people. So there's building design and construction, which looks at really everything of the building, core and shell, and the interior, whereas interior design and construction just focuses on what's inside the building. I found myself in the world of operations and maintenance, and this rating system is really for buildings that are already built out and they're not going through major interior design changes. The operations and maintenance rating system looks at, how does the building function? How much energy does it actually use? Are the people in the building actually happy, or are they living and working in a sick building, right? So there's the design aspect where it's like, we hope the building will be used this way and we hope it will use this much energy, water, and resources. Whereas the operations and maintenance rating system is really looking at, is the proof in the pudding? Is the building actually functioning how it was designed? And you don't have to have a LEED certification for the building design and construction for it to be an O&M LEED certified facility. There's a lot of buildings that were built a long time ago that are actually quite efficient. The materials that they use might not be green, right? But how it's operated and how it maintains the health and well-being of the building may be superior to others that were designed in a really green way, right? But maybe don't operate like a green building. So it's important to know that there are many aspects and there's rating systems for that as well. And these last two are relatively new. There's neighborhood development and LEED for homes. I haven't seen a lot of projects fall into these two categories, primarily because it's quite expensive to go through LEED, and a high-rise building in a downtown area has a bit more resources to pursue certification than like a single-family home. But there's still a lot of opportunity in this area, and I think that this is really where we're going to see a surgence in sustainability in the built environment, is neighborhood development and LEED for homes. So there's 5 rating systems covering a wide range of building types, and hospitals, schools, commercial offices, those fall into each of these categories, of course, except for homes and neighborhood development. So LEED certification is for buildings. The number of points that a building achieves gets a different certification level. Just to bring into perspective, in California, building to just the California Building Code would pretty much gets you certified through LEED. Like, that's how progressive the California Building Code is. With a little bit of effort, you can get to silver. So where you see a lot of LEED Gold and LEED Platinum buildings in California, and I think the rating system that is offered for each of the building types and the points allocated to the different certification levels are valuable, but really, what level you get may be more important to an individual building owner than the general public. It's very difficult to get a LEED Platinum building, but it certainly can be done. And LEED, of course, can apply to people as well. I would highly recommend everybody to pursue their LEED Green Associate credential. It is a very well recognized credential program. It's relatively easy to get, and it doesn't require any project experience to get the LEED Green Associate. And I can't tell you how many students I've had that have come back or emailed me 6, 9, 12 months later and said, thank you so much for encouraging me to get my GA. I got this job with XYZ company because of the credential and being able to talk about green building in a thoughtful way. So if you want assistance getting your green associate, if this is something that's interesting to you, make sure to reach out to me. I have a lot of resources. I teach a class, and I'd be happy to support you in that process. So we talked about the different rating systems. Buildings get certified, people get accredited. But what does the scorecard or the certification process look like? Well, there's 7 key credit categories, and I'll just take a moment to walk through all of them with you here. So first is location and transportation. The big one here is where buildings are built are as important, if not more important, than how they're built, right? So you can build a LEED Platinum home um, out in the Rocky Mountains, and it could be a 100% net zero, producing its own food, renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. But if it takes an hour to get into town or anywhere you need to go, the emissions related to transportation are quite large, actually, when it comes to a home, and the overall carbon footprint of a home. So where a building is located and its accessibility to other amenities is really important in the overall sustainability of those buildings. So new construction projects look at, is it close to a bus stop? Is there parking spaces for electric vehicles? Is there a shower if you bike to work that you can shower in? For an existing building, it's how do people get to the building, right? How are people actually getting to the building? Are your carpooling programs working or are they not? So that just kind of gives you an idea of what location and transportation is going to cover. Sustainable sites, these credits encourage strategies to minimize the impact on local ecosystems and water resources. So for a new construction project, building a bioswale to mitigate stormwater pollution prevention would go into sustainable sites. Selecting water-wise or drought-resistant landscaping, it would go into this. Looking at how a site is irrigated falls into this as well, and constantly looking at ways that a site can be improved over time. For an existing building, sustainable sites might be what type of equipment is used to maintain the landscape. Are there pesticides or herbicides being used? And if they are you making sure that they're low toxic, or at least informing people in the building that they're being used? And then there are other aspects of maintaining or preserving native habitat that are quite important as well, that show up in the sustainable sites category. Water efficiency is pretty straightforward. These credits promote smart use of water indoors and outdoors, and focusing on reclaimed or recycled water versus drinkable or potable water. Why do we flush our toilets and irrigate our lawn with drinkable water? I have no idea why we're still doing that. And LEED is really pushing for us to consider water reuse, gray water use, water recycling, and being really smart about how we irrigate and the flush and flow fixtures inside a building. So new construction, looking at what fixtures are installed in a building, how we irrigate the exterior. Are we metering this information, or are we just taking a guess? And for existing buildings, we're looking at how much water does it actually, is the building actually using? Does that make sense for how many people are in the building and the use of that facility, or how it was designed? And what actions can be taken to make the building more efficient in its water use? Energy and atmosphere. This one has a long list of potential credits, but generally speaking, we're trying to make more energy efficient buildings and amplify the use of renewable energy and storage technologies. Um, Lighting, ventilation, heating sources, hot water pumping throughout a building. This would often require an audit of an existing building to see what possible improvements there are and the costs and benefits of those. Really, energy and water efficiency are investments in a building that oftentimes have really favorable financial returns. For new construction, how are we designing the building so it uses the least amount of energy for the comfort we're trying to achieve? And that goes for single or dual pane windows. What are we insulating the building with? Which direction is it facing? All of those things are really important in the design of a building to promote a very energy efficient facility. And the reality is renewable energy is here, it's cost effective, and the use of renewable technologies reduces the overall carbon footprint of a building considerably. Materials and resources for new construction, pretty simple. What is the building made out of? Where did those resources come from? And how are those materials being maintained? How do they affect the people in the building? For existing buildings, we're really looking at what is being purchased and thrown away. What opportunities are there to change our purchasing practices so our waste is recyclable or compostable versus landfilled? Material and resources doesn't have the most points on the scorecard, but I think is a really important aspect of green building. Indoor environmental quality, this is a big area where I think we're going to see an increased focus when it comes to green building because it affects the people in the buildings. Right? How is ventilation circulated throughout a facility? How is it being filtered? What are um, the products, the materials, the furniture in that facility? How is that affecting the air quality and the people in that building? Is there daylighting? Are there views to the outside in the natural environment? Are people in the building generally comfortable, or do they feel like the building's making them sick? And these are all really important aspects of a green building that are covered in indoor environmental quality. And lastly, we have innovation. The USGBC has created a category for buildings that are doing something special that aren't really covered in any of the categories. So these typically see 6 different points on the innovation credit category. And this is where a green building class or cool educational signage in a building or a green building tour, all sorts of other things can add points on a scorecard, kind of going above and beyond. And so throughout all these credit categories, you might find yourself more interested in one or another. And if you were to focus on a certain category, there's a list of a dozen or more different career paths that fall under one or more of these credit categories. So there are a lot of other certification programs. We are a local chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. By no means do I think LEED is the only and the greatest certification program that exists. It really just has the best brand and the best reputation in the industry. So while LEED holds the throne, there are many others out there that I think are very promising, really exciting moving forward. If this is interesting to you, I highly recommend looking into the Living Building Challenge. They're administered by the Living Future Institute up in Seattle. This is like the creme de la creme of green buildings that exist. We're talking net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste, and where they're managing their waste on site within the project boundary and looking to find ways of beautifying the buildings and creating environments where people can meditate, can focus on mindfulness. And these are new aspects of green building that have never been discussed before. Like creating spaces for people to meditate in a building that's sustainable, it does make sense. But the Living Building Institute is really doing some great stuff around sustainability. There's the WELL building standard, which really focuses on the indoor environmental quality aspects. So the health and wellness of people in the buildings. It looks at air, water, nourishment, light, fitness, comfort, and mindfulness. So this is also part of the GBCI program and similar to LEED, but more focused on health and well-being versus materials and functionality of a building. There's passive house design, which was created in Germany in the 90s. And the certification began in 2007. But passive house really is focused on what are the ways that we can reduce the energy consumption, reduce our overall carbon footprint without using active technologies like a photovoltaic system or a furnace. You know, some of these things include orienting a building to south facing, using overhangs to protect from the summer sun, dual pane windows, high thermal mass inside the building so it warms up and keeps the building warm during the winter months. So, you know, I think every building should start with passive house design and then go from there. You know, certifications are based on an energy model, architectural designs, and a site visit. So it's totally doable. I think that there's a lot of promise with passive house. Net zero energy buildings. This is definitely the baseline in California now, but it's part of the Living Building Challenge and just looks at energy consumption and where that energy is coming from and how it's being offset, either through energy efficiency, renewable energy, or some other form of offsets. Energy Star. You may have heard of Energy Star for appliances like dishwashers or washing machines, but buildings can get Energy Star certified as well. I have a lot of students in my class have gotten jobs because they understand Energy Star Portfolio Manager really well. And that's how to benchmark a building and set goals for improvement. You can benchmark any building. I recommend going on there and benchmarking your home today. That will get you acquainted with energy use and as well as the Energy Star platform. And I promise you, it'll benefit you in the long run. There's the HERS home rating system, which I think is also a really great opportunity where individuals can become a HERS rater and look at the energy performance of a home and through an index, basically give it a rating. As buildings or as homes really focus on sustainability, HERS raters are going to increase in value. They're going to be sought after. And really, I think, you know, it's hard to say the future is not green. And, you know, I hesitate to use that word because it's been used for so many years, but really it's true. The materials that we use, if we're going to double our square footage, we need to be looking at sustainable forests or sustainable production of materials. With 10 billion people on the planet, we got to be quite careful where we're getting our energy resources from. Fossil fuels are here, you know, it's a part of our current reality, but in the future, I don't think that we're going to be having too many of them. Water and indoor environment, ecological vitality, human well-being, and careers. Really, you know, sustainability is being woven into job descriptions. You know, if you go to any job search function and just type in LEED and see what comes up. You know, there are many job descriptions that at least have LEED as a requirement or a secondary credential that hiring managers are looking for. So just real quick, how can students get involved? Well, for those of you in Ventura, I'm creating the Ventura Regional Council, which I would love to have student participation in, identifying ways that the Central Coast Green Building Council can offer services and for Ventura. We do have membership. I would welcome all of you to become CCGBC members. Student discount, student membership fees are $15 for the year, and that gets you access to a lot of our resources. And in 2021, I'm going to be focusing on developing a mentorship program. So if you're someone who really wants to get into architecture and you're looking for someone to mentor you over a short period of time, I want to support you in getting in contact with someone that's willing to take some time and support you getting into the career that you want. Or at a very minimum, allowing you to interview someone who is in a career that you're interested in, just to learn a little bit more before you get going too far. And if there are skills trainings or other education, like if you want a LEED Green Associate class, we can put that together. And so I'm interested to hear if students would like that, um, and what you want to see moving forward. Membership benefits, access to local resources, local events. There's a newsletter that goes out with all sorts of training opportunities and everything that's happening in the Tri-County. Connecting with other green building leaders, enhancing your career through advocacy and leadership. $15 is a small amount, but it does help us in doing these programs, providing education to more people, advocating at a local and a state level, and furthering the exposure to these different topics and concepts. So before we open it up, I just want to let you know we're going to be doing these guest presentations once a month through the remainder of the year. I think we'll take a break in December. But basically, the last Wednesday of every month, we're going to have another professional put together a presentation talking about a variety of different things. So next month, Javier Saucedo from 3C Ren is going to talk about home energy efficiency. This guy knows more about home energy efficiency than anyone I've known. And he's supported so many families after the Thomas fire in making sure that their attics are sealed, that their ventilation is working well, that homes are efficient and healthy for them. So you don't want to miss that one. Cash Upton is the incoming president for the CCGBC. He's going to talk about solar and storage and different careers in that industry. Paul Poirier is involved with the AIA. So for those of you involved in AIA, you may have heard of Paul. He's one of our founding board members, and he's going to talk about the 2030 commitment and electrification. Lisa Eklund's going to talk about different career development strategies and resources for students. And Candace, another CCGBC board member, will talk about the public-private interface with LEED projects. She's done a lot of LEED certifications for fire facilities and municipal facilities. So here's my final slide. I'm a big proponent of getting connected and networking. It's helped me get to where I am today. A lot of, I've been well prepared and well educated over my life, but really it's been the people that are around me and my network that have supported me and continue to. Having Lisa and Ralph here to push and support this effort is just one small example of that. So if anything is interesting here today, or if you'd like to reach out to me, this is my personal email. Shoot me an email. If you want to know more about LEED or the Green Associate or whatever it might be, you want to get involved with the CCGBC, just shoot me an email and we'll get connected there. And if you don't have a LinkedIn, I know it's kind of silly, but it's been one of the best resources that I've used over the years for career development, figuring out what's out there, connecting with professionals. So if you have an account, go ahead and add me. If you see someone that I'm connected with that you want to be connected with, that's what it's for. Shoot me a message and say, hey, I see you're connected with Paul. Would you mind putting us in touch? I'd be happy to do that, especially if it's going to further your career path. So